So I'm Kiki. I work for Mae'n on the Welsh Government Smart Towns Wales programme. And as part of this programme, we raise awareness of different technologies. We invite different solutions providers in to give kind of overviews of what they're doing, and we also promote different case studies. So as part of this, we're going to be looking today at Patrum, which is a dashboard created by Paul. So thanks for joining us, Paul. I will just give it another minute to make sure that there's no one else trying to join us, and then I'll hand over to Paul. So if you have any questions as we go along, which I'm sure you will, if you pop them in the chat, and then we'll make sure that we address them all at the end, just so that we're not interrupting as we go, but do pop them in as you think of them, and then we'll talk about them at the end. So diolch, and I'll pass over to Paul.
Hi everyone. Just get the slide up and running. Okay, ydy pawb yn medru weld sgrin yna? Can everyone see that screen? Iawn, okay. Na I wneud hon trwy'r gyfrwng Saesneg, ond cofiwch mae yna croeso ar diwedd I fi ateb yn ôl yn y Gymraeg, ond mae'n just hawsau I fi wneud yn Saesneg. Just saying that I'll be running this in English, but I'll be answering any questions or dealing with any inquiries and covering things in Welsh as and when we get around to talking about things. Okay, so I'm here the objective is to help people understand how to use the data that we capture to inform business decisions. So first, I'm just going to cover very briefly who we are. I've got to make one point absolutely clear, Kiki, that I've had no hand in the coding of this system whatsoever. It's a team effort. There's currently 9 of us, soon to be 10. We're based in Gwynedd and Anglesey. We've been running for 3.5 years now, without any investment. And these are the people that we enjoy working with. We work for Department for Transport in Whitehall, and we work for Cyngor Powys County Council, Mae'n, obviously, which is why we're here, Cyngor Sir Fôn, and Cyngor Gwynedd, Adra, and KPMG. We work with them along with DFT on some of our systems. What do? We don't just do Patrum. We've developed a number of solutions over the last 3.5 years. One which has taken a large proportion of our lives is with timetable data for buses, where we've now been adopted across England, and hopefully further today we've been adopted across Wales as well, although Wales is where the project started. We also run a school transport system, which has helped Cyngor Powys save over £500,000 in its first year of use, which uses low-cost open source technology. We've been working with Adra, North Wales' largest social housing provider. With Adra, we've been developing a pilot, but now that's going to be extended to be a full production system, which the initial project was to use data from sensors, which touches upon where we're going to be going, to help inform either family or carers of changes in behaviour of their family members, so helping them to identify early onset Alzheimer's. The pilot was a success, and it's now going to be extended, hopefully signed off in the next couple of months. We also run local e-commerce. What that means is we ran a service called Shopio over the lockdown, which has turned over in excess of 150k, just with a few businesses. It's still running, people are still using it, but obviously since lockdown, usage has gone down. But the plan is now that this will be extended to help local holiday accommodation providers incentivize the visitors to use local food producers. So we're just in the process of tendering that bid now to make it something where when people book their holiday cottage, they will be able to order and receive local food produce rather than going to Tesco's when they arrive. and the reason we're here, which is Smart Places and Patron. Everything we do that's funded by the public purse is open source. That means somebody can take a copy of the code and run it. They can't sell it, but they can definitely run it. Open data, which is the whole purpose behind Patron. Open code, hefyd mae pob dim yn dwyieithog. Everything we design from ground up has language at the core. So instead of it, as often is the case, something that's added at the end to the user, it's there with data as well. Right, so that's the sort of precursor of and done with. This is what we're hoping to cover in the very short time we've got available. I'm going to give you an intro to Patron. I'm going to cover the actual essentials. There's not too many, so hopefully that'll be straightforward. We're then going to look at how you can select places and how you can select the metrics, how you download the data, all of which we hope should be pretty straightforward once explained. And then we're going to try the challenge of importing that data into a Google Sheet, which is very similar to other brands of spreadsheet. And people are welcome to have a go trying to copy or follow using a Google Sheet. We're going to have a go. The challenge that we've set ourselves is we want to be able to get you to see how you can use the data that's collected to find the busiest day of the week in a place over a period of time. So that's not just looking at last week and going, oh, Thursday was busy. It's using the power of a spreadsheet, which is available to us all, to be able to say over the last quarter of 2022, the busiest day of the week in this place was Thursday, because it might not be apparent until you sort of plug into a spreadsheet. And then we're going to show how to use this data to present graphs that might be more informative than the ones we've got already. So there's a lot to do, a lot to cover. And I apologize in advance, particularly for the spreadsheet things, because it might turn into a bit of a spreadsheet tutorial, which I hope it doesn't. Right. So Smart Places. Patron forms part of what we do, but what does a smart place mean really quickly? Well, we've got an image there of Ynys Enlli, one of the projects we worked on with Cyngor Gwynedd, and the government was to get Bardsey and Enlli connected to superfast broadband, and to also put in what's called a LoRaWAN gateway. Now, this isn't a network that belongs to a lady called Laura. It's a description of a specific type of network. Very, very different to everything else we'll talk about. It's a network that only carries very small amounts of data, literally the temperature, the humidity level. It cannot carry large amounts of data. And we were putting this gateway into Enlli, and there wasn't really much purpose for it we could see. So what we did with one of our new recruits was we developed a smart place system for Enlli. It's very different to what we have in Patron, but it enables the islanders to monitor the levels of water in their tanks, because that's very, very important to them. That it can measure dampness in the property, which has murals on the wall. And over the next 12 months, it will be extended in partnership with Bangor University to help the Wilva, the bird observatory, to start to use sensors to help them understand more about the nesting behavior of some of the birds there. So that's one example of a smart place. Very, very different though, because that is on the island. It's independent. It's run very different. Patron is a system that's taken a lot longer than 3 years to develop, but the focus has been over the last 2.5 years. It covers over 20, or it will by the end of May, cover 28 locations around Northwest Wales. Here's a map that shows them. There's several that are hidden underneath others. So we've got quite a cohesive view of most of the key towns and villages in Gwynedd. There are some exceptions, we understand. And also we've got 4 or 5 locations which might be more regarded as a tourism location, like Bwthyn Ogwen or Porthamloch. So that was the overview of what we do and Patreon itself. There will be a bit of an explainer in a minute as to how it works, but let's look at some screens and see if we can start to see what we're trying to achieve. So what I've taken here is a screen grab of Ogwen Cottage. And I've picked 3 metrics, the 3 we sort of regard as the most useful. The first one is the map. That is an important piece of information because it's telling us where we are capturing the data, where data is being acquired from, because everybody's idea of Ogwen might be different. So what we're saying is that the data we're collecting is only relevant to that area. We've then got something which gives a combined graph of the gender and age group data. So it's giving us a picture of the people who've logged into the Wi-Fi and answered our questionnaire. And we're also importantly introducing a date range. We're saying from the 16th of December to the 7th of March, this is the makeup of the people who responded. The next graph, it's counting the number of devices. And what you will hopefully see is there are lots of peaks and troughs. And the peaks and troughs typically relate back to weekends and weekdays, which is no surprise. It's Ogwen. So the peaks of usage in Ogwen will be the weekend, and you can see them clearly delineated there, that you've got those peaks there. The next one below is the map. When people log into the Wi-Fi and they answer the questionnaire, we ask them for the top level home postcodes. So for us, that might be LL55 or LL57. And this is the map, and it's showing us over that period of time that clearly people from Cornwall don't like coming to Ogwen. But apart from that, we've got quite a large catchment area for visitors to Ogwen, but clearly the most popular areas are North Wales, the LL postcode area, and Merseyside, Liverpool, Cheshire. Then we've got the purpose of the visit. This is important. We ask the same questions in every location. And unsurprisingly, the majority of people are there for an outdoor activity. Others are there for holidays. And I'm one of the ones in the other, which is it allows you to put in different reasons like work or whatever. And also then we've got the language. This is us asking them, and what language would you prefer us to communicate with you in? And the majority of these, you can't see it because it's off the screen, but the majority of people that visit Ogwen prefer to use English. We then move to Porthaethwy, Menai Bridge, and it's a different place. And it's the same date range, 16th of December to the 6th of March. We've got an idea of the area that's covered. So obviously, if you're on the website, you can zoom in. And this is now giving us a different makeup of the types of people that are there. And also, when we look at the visits per day, which will it's much more consistent. You'll find that the Sundays are quite often the days with the least people, unsurprisingly. Also, the colours. If we went back to Ogwen, you'll see that there are very, very few oranges and greens and reds. Most people are blues. What that means is the majority of visits to the car park area take between 5 and 30 minutes. That is how long people are staying in Ogwen. Whereas when we look at Porthaethwy, that we're starting to see a lot more people staying there for an hour or longer. So that's called dwell time. And we can see straight away that there are significant differences there. Surprisingly, there's a lot of people traveling from lots of different places. And I'm saying surprisingly because we all come with preconceptions. And I didn't expect to have Porthaethwy quite so cosmopolitan, but there it is. There's a lot of visitors from different places, but again, predominantly from North Wales. And clearly now we're starting to see things that should make sense to us, that there's a lot more people coming to Porthaethwy for shopping, visiting family and friends. There are still people coming for outdoor activities, for walks, etc. An awful lot of people coming. The predominant reason that we're seeing visits for Porthaethwy during that period is eating out, socializing, which is understandable. There are people on holiday, there are people visiting for cultural and other, a large one for other. And when we break that down, when we look at the data, which sadly isn't yet exposed to the public is there's an awful lot of people there either studying or working. Those are the reasons why people are there. And we can see that the language preferences for Porth A3 are significantly more Welsh language and English rather than Bwthyn. Final place, just to get this idea of looking at different places and the way we capture data, we're looking at Beth. Again, a difference in the makeup of the people that are visiting. And here we start to see the impact of holidays much, much more. So we've got the Christmas holidays and we've got half terms. And those do actually make an impact on that specific place. And as we go and do the exercise of exporting data, although I promise it's not Beth that's place A in the exercise, it's a similar kind of place. And again, we see a difference to Bwthyn, where Welsh is a preferred language to a greater extent, but also the green, which is other. That's where somebody's specified, and we can, again, that data is available to people, so we can then start to see how many people did say that they preferred to be spoken and communicated with in Spanish or Dutch or German or Chinese. Sorry, Mandarin or Cantonese. And the purpose for the visits, very different to Porth A3. Not many people go to Beth to go shopping. But there are people that are going for outdoor activities, on holidays, it's much more mixed. And again, it has a large catchment area from the Midlands, Southwest Wales and above. But again, a lot of people travelling to Beth locally. So that's me trying to take my spin on how Patron presents the headline data. The bit that I apologise to for most people, but I'm going to just ask you to focus on the boxes at the bottom. You'll see that there's a red box at the bottom that says data acquisition. There's a blue box at the bottom that says third-party networks. There's a green box, and there's a very tasteful lavender box. All I'm trying to explain here is how the system works. We have a number of networks. They have Wi-Fi access points. And that's where we capture information about footfall and dwell times, etc. Because what we're able to do legally is count the number of portable electronic devices that people are carrying in their pockets. We deal with this in an extremely GDPR data protection compliant way, to the point where at the end of every day, we delete all that data. So we don't store that, which would have some great benefits to some measures, but for GDPR compliance, it just means that we have no idea of knowing if somebody who was in Beth yesterday is there today, unless they log in. So this is how we count that information. We also allow people to log in to Porth, which is the little grey box. That's where we capture personal data with that user's consent. And the big green box at the end is where all that data gets assembled and put together in such a way that we can use it either for informing business decisions, or in the case with Porth, where we can combine the data that we've got in terms of busyness and present that to users and allow them to be able to create email marketing campaigns to members of the public that have signed into their community. So I apologize for that slide, but it's I just want to express how this information is collected and some of the quite clear complexities in that. Right, now, how to use this system. So what we've got, so there's just two key components of the user interface on Porth. What you've got to remember is as you start to use it, so let's say you are somebody who's based in Harlech, and really all you're interested in is Harlech. What we wanted to create was a system that, without logging in, once you've created your view of Patron, that the system would remember. Now, one thing that will be coming in shortly is it will also be asking you at the outset for what language you prefer to use. So that's something that will come in. But at the moment, it gives you, as you probably noticed, it gives you all the places all at once. These are all the places we cover. If you want to clear your slate and just have a blank page, which is what we're going to do in a minute, you just have to click on the X up in the top corner of the screen, the top right-hand corner. So that will clear all the places and all the metrics from your view of Porth. That's what I do. I always start off with a clean slate. To add things, you can see at the bottom right-hand corner, there's a big blue plus. Yeah. So that's how you add things to Porth. The top right-hand is how you control clearing things, the date range for everything, and the language that you're viewing everything through. And when you change the language to Cymraeg, that will change everything. So even your data downloads will have everything in that language, from the dates to the axes. Everything comes through in the language. So this is what happens when you click on the X. It asks you to confirm, do you want to clear the page? So, and there we had a page there of information about Bethesda. I clicked on clear, and this is what you get. A blank slate. So by clicking on the plus, you will see a screen like this, which is a list of all the places in alphabetical order. You can search for a place by just clicking in the search tool at the top right, or you can scroll down. And if you see, as well as it containing the place names, there's a drop down on the right-hand side next to each row. The reason why it looks kind of quite large on a desktop, but there's a big space, is because the system's been designed to be used on mobile as well. So that's how it comes over on a desktop. And these are the metrics that you are currently able to select for every place. So we have the visitor data, which we capture from the logins, where people log in on the Wi-Fi. This is where we give you the option to select this data. The visits per day is what we collect from the Wi-Fi access points. Access points is the map. And Wi-Fi users, this is an interesting one, which I haven't included because I just wanted to keep it fitting on the screen. What Wi-Fi users means is the number of returning visitors. So what we'd expect to see there in somewhere like Porthmadog is that there'd be a significant number of returning. That means people who are logging in again, people who regularly use the Wi-Fi. Whereas in Bwthyn we might expect to see a very small proportion of those. And sensor data. So we've got installed at every location at the moment a particulate sensor. We've just been working with one in Llanberis because there's been a big piece of work carried out which is currently being deployed. And until that's done, we didn't want to bring in the other sensors. So we've got particulate sensors in every location. What does that measure? It measures the particles in the atmosphere, typically particles that are created by vehicle exhausts or by tyres or other forms. It's basically measuring dust. And as Kiki showed in one brilliant snippet on LinkedIn a few months ago, the one in Llanberis was quite adamant that a bonfire night lasted over more than one night, but it definitely happened in Llanberis that night. As part of that, it also provides information on temperature and humidity, but we are bringing in weather stations because we feel that experience has shown us that weather has a big impact on footfall. Yes, so that's sensor data. And as we'll cover if we have time, it will also bring in things like traffic volumes and things using seismometers, which is all a bit tomorrow's world. Okay, so selecting, you can either click in the boxes. You see there I've got blue checks in the boxes or not. Or if you look on the top right of each box, there's a place where you can just choose to select everything or deselect everything. Once you've chosen the metrics that you want, you click on the add button that you can see there at the bottom. And this then creates your view of Patron. So this is what Patron would now remember if you'd done it. So this individual is very interested in towing, and the date range that they're using is literally, they're just looking at one of the quick hits, which is last month, which is why that comes up in yellow. So this is towing, this is the view. And that means that person, every time they go to Patreon, this is what they'll see. But if they go in April, they will see March as their view. So that's what we're trying to accommodate with this. Okay, the next thing before we start downloading data, because we're wanting, or we believe that many people might want to use this data to understand how their place behaves in the context of other similar places. We want to emphasize this, that it's apples, that you compare like places. So although this is all subjective, I would suggest that somewhere, two places like Beth and Harlech are similar. They're similar in size, they're similar in that they have a local community, but they're a tourist attraction. They're not similar in the fact that one's by the coast and has an enormous castle, so we could discuss the differences. But to me, in terms of a similarity between places on that big long list, you've got Beth and Harlech. Making assumptions based on that, like why is Harlech always busier on a Thursday than Beth, and what can we do about it? Because that's the opportunity we want to see if we can take benefit from. It's better doing that. What I wouldn't suggest is comparing Pwllheli with Porth Amlwch, despite the fact that they've both got harbours, because Porth Amlwch is very small, and it doesn't have a shop unless you want to buy aqualungs. If you want to buy aqualungs, you can go shopping, but apart from that, it's got some lovely cafes, a great pub, and a couple of museums. Pwllheli's got an awful lot more to offer. So comparing those two places, there could be a reason. There's no rule, but try to remember. I'll try to take that into account. I don't want to sound patronising here at all. Sorry. Is that it's the places that we have. Comparing Caernarfon and Bangor makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. Right. So downloading data and then starting to work on spreadsheets, the dreaded working live on the system. So please shout if you don't see the screen. Patreon allows you at the moment to download data when you've created that specific metric. So here I've got Beth Gallet from the 1st of October to the 31st of December. So that's the time span I've selected. I used the calendar at the top of the screen. You can use the calendar for each individual metric. It's the bottom of the metric, the little tab that you're seeing. So all of my measures here for Beth Gallet are from the 1st of October to the end of the year. To get hold of the data, I need to click on that, what's called a hamburger menu at the top right. You see there's several options there. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can go back to home, or you can download. And what it gives you the ability to download is one or two images. SVGs are just better quality. So if you're printing something out from marketing, or you know it's going to need to be big, you could download an SVG. PNG's nice, small, and portable. Something to post on Facebook or LinkedIn or internally in an email. And the one that we're interested in, which is download a CSV. A CSV, for if you've not used CSVs, it stands for comma separated variables. All it means is it's a very primitive spreadsheet file. It's just a file that's got a table of data that your spreadsheet will happily import. So it's just saying, download me the numbers. Yeah. So let's go to, oh yeah, now this is the bit where I move to Patreon. So hopefully you can still see what I'm doing. Can you see this? No?
Yeah, we can see. Yeah, we can see.
You can see me dragging it in, yeah? So you
Yep,
can
I see it.
We can see the pivot table slide.
Oh yeah, okay, right. So let me just right. So if I just open up a window to Patreon, I'll show you now. Okay, so here's me live on the system. I'm going to download some data. I'm going to download that CSV. Yeah. Did you see that happen? probably not the most exciting thing that's going to happen this evening to people on the internet, but I downloaded it and here it is. It's appeared in my browser, which is a Mac, in my downloads folder. Yeah, so that's what the system does. It downloads data that you've selected because that's the data I want to download, and it's put it into my downloads folder. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to something I prepared earlier. Can you see that spreadsheet? Yeah, great. Okay, let me just maximize the view now so that this... So I am really apologizing now. This is not what people expected. 20 minutes on a spreadsheet with Sandom. This really is bad. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import that data. So I'm using Google Sheets, but like I said, Excel, Apple Numbers, there's any number of Neo Office, LibreOffice. So I'm going to import and I'm going to select upload and I'm just going to drag my file in. So there will be differences, but that's how you've downloaded the file, get that file into your spreadsheet. I'm going to create, let me just go back. Let me go over here and I'm going to create a new sheet. File, import, upload. Insert new sheet, because that means I'm keeping everything else in my spreadsheet clear. And it's going to detect all the things, and it's done it. There we go. It's imported in a meaningless table of numbers to us all. Yeah. And what I really want to focus on is how do we make that, in essence, meaningless table of numbers usable? And how do we mix it and match it with other data that you might have, like if it was a business, your takings for that period. Because if you're using something like Stripe or Square, there'll be easily accessible abilities for those businesses to download their sales data for that period of time. And this is what we're wanting to try and get people, incentivize people to do. So the first problem we've got is that our system downloads the dates like that. There are reasons for that, but for us, it's not very helpful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of these things. And you can do that by highlighting the bits that you don't want, which is everything from the T onwards. And I'm going to copy that into my clipboard. That's all I've done. I've highlighted the bit that's spoiling it for us, because we can all see the rest is the 1st of October 2022. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the cheat. I'm going to go to find and replace. I'm going to say to find and replace this, which is what I just copied into my clipboard. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to replace it with nothing. And I'm going to say, just do it to this sheet. So does that make sense? I took the bit I needed to get rid of. I got to edit, find and replace. I put it in. I'm replacing it with nothing. I'm only doing it on this sheet and I'm saying replace all. And hey presto, it's gone. So I've got rid of the fluff, the stuff that was stopping the spreadsheet. Understand that that was a date, which is really, really important to us because we're wanting to be able to work with this data. So I've done that. But the thing is, it's a spreadsheet, so it's not very clever. It still thinks these are numbers. So I'm going to highlight the column and I'm going to format them to be dates. So it's going to change them. And because it knows we're in the UK, it's now changed them from the horrible American dates. Apologies to anybody who prefers the American dates. It's now, so we've now got on the system a spreadsheet that understands that the data I've downloaded is specific. Each row is specific for a separate day. So let's look at the row. So I mentioned to you in passing, probably far too quickly, that when we looked at those graphs of Defnyddio and Beth and Porthaethwy, and I tried to highlight the fact that on that graph, it showed you in Defnyddio there was lots of blues and not many other colours. And that was referring to the fact that most of the visitors that are in Defnyddio itself are only there for periods of between 5 minutes and half and an hour, maybe. I think it's half. No, it's 5 minutes and half an hour. So the people in Defnyddio, the vast majority of them are in there. Now, this place, which I think was Blaenau, it's still the case. If we look at the numbers, it's saying that on the 1st of October, there were 180 devices, which we're assuming are people, in Blaenau Ffestiniog at that point in time, on that day, that were there for between 5 and 10 minutes. So that could be they were popping into the co-op, they were buying some pasties from Central Bakery, they were doing all sorts of things, yeah, but they were only there for a short period of time. There's still an awful lot of people, though, that were there for 111 people were there for up to half an hour, and then the numbers start to decline to the point where we can start to assume these might well be people that live there or work there. So that's what this is doing. This hopefully that's what we did. We downloaded a graph that was describing it, and this is how it actually then comes back into numbers. Now, because we don't have the time to turn this into a spreadsheet frenzy, here's something I prepared earlier. I've been looking forward to saying that all day, so I'm glad I've got that out. What I've done is I've done some formatting because I'm human and I want to be able to see at a glance what that data means. So what I've done is I've done a few bits, and I'll be sharing. I'll share the link to this spreadsheet with Kiki, so you can all have a fertile around and look at it and see if you can steal it. It's there. So it's a Google sheet. That's one of the advantages of Google Sheets. That you know, you can do your data and then you can share that sheet with somebody else without sticking it in an email. And you can even, which sadly I was doing earlier on today, you can edit it together. Yeah. So there are sometimes advantages for this, but yeah. So one of the things I did was, because I'm doing some data analysis on this, I'm really interested in the days of the week, because I want to get to show you that one of the things that might inform people or help people to see if the system can provide information that either backs up a hunch or surprises them is I wanted to be able to find out what the busiest day of the week was in place A and place B. So first what I did was I've basically ID'd the days. It's a very dull way of doing things, but it means that every Saturday now is 7, as you can see, because that's how these sheets hang. And I've then put in the days of the week. Yeah, again, using a specific formula. Google Sheets and Excel, you could do these with a little bit of tweaking. So it says the Sadon, the Sil, the Llyn. So it doesn't have to be in English. I'm just doing it because it was quick to get it done. So I've done that, and then I did some conditional formatting. I'm sorry for using all these words, which basically said that every time you see in a 1 or 7, make it a nice orange colour, because I've got no sense of colour. So I just picked something horrible, but it identifies then to people when the weekends were, because I'm using that as the thing I'm interested in. It could well be that somebody, for some reason, is interested in Wednesdays. Well, you can apply the same logic. It's a spreadsheet. And what I've also done is I've totaled up. So I've taken the data from this row and I've summed it up. So we've got a total count of the people who, the devices that we're assuming are people that were in that place on that day. I'm hoping that people are still with me and nobody's tuned into Coronation Street or something. But I'm just trying to cover that this is what you do with the data. Patrum is a gateway, a way to be able to come to assumptions or to play with things, but really it should be bringing that data down and starting to work on it and bringing in additional data. So I've done that, and I've done it as well for the other place with a slightly nicer color. Again, applying the same rules there. So we've got some consistency, and we can start to see totals for the days, etc. What I've also done is I've made up a business. Okay, because my business is in one of those places, and I wanted to just try and show you that by importing data from something else, like your EPOS system in a business, or car parking data, if you've got a car park, some way of being able to access the data on a daily basis. So if it was a car park, you know, how much did we take as a simple metric, have that number down against every date. because then you can start to mix and match this data together and see if there are any patterns. Yeah, because that's what we're trying to do. So I've literally made this up. So it's an awful business, but at least I get some days off. That's the only bit I've got there. But this is just to put it in. We'd love to be able to work with anonymized business data so that we could support businesses. We really don't want to know what the business is, but to be able to bring that in and see how that actually reflects against how busy a place is on certain days, or weather or other things is something we think is where then the local high street businesses can start to exploit this, just like the Amazons and Argoses of this world can do. So I've done that. I also tried to play with weather. We are recording weather. This is weather from Rosgadvan, which we haven't got as a smart place, but it was something I was able to get hold of. But the metric that I wanted, which was rainfall and sunshine, which are the two that really do have an impact, but it became worthless because in the month of October, unsurprisingly last year, the variation in temperature in Rosgadvan was minimal. So it's very difficult to infer anything from that, but it was in there. So this is now where we start to mix things together. I'll just delete that. Okay, it's the charts. How can we use this data to try and illuminate something to us? So this is a chart I made of one of the places. Okay, let's make it bigger so we can see it. So what this chart is doing is it's showing us the of both places. Sorry, so that's probably this one's better. Yeah, I'll do this one. This is one place, and it's showing us over the period of that exercise. It's showing us the quantities of people, and when you move on it, it starts telling you that these are the 5 to 10 minutes, these are the 10 to 30 minutes, and these are the 30 to 60 minutes. To me, the sweet spot is between these two. These are the people who are in your town. They've not gone there just for a specific purpose of getting a coffee, buying a lottery ticket, posting a parcel. They've gone there to do something, whether that's socialise or go shopping or whatever. So these are the people where high street businesses or other things, events, etc. These are the areas that are interesting. And you can sort of see that there are some patterns, but it's difficult to infer. But we are beginning to bring this data in. Now, how did I do that? Okay, so let's go back. In fact, let's be cheeky and just delete that one. So I want to insert a chart here. So, and this works in any spreadsheet. I go to Insert and Chart. And then the chart tells us this usual, really, really unhelpful thing, no data. And that's because I've got to find some data. So in this type of spreadsheet, I'll go here and I will say, I want to go to place A and I want the dates, because that's very important. Otherwise, it would just be a graph of things going up and down. And I'm going to pick 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm going to hold my key down. So I've got that. And then I'm going to go to place B. And I'm going to pick their 5 to 10 minutes. So I've picked 3 data ranges. I've picked the date. I've picked the dwell time of 5 to 10 minutes in one place. And I've picked the data range, the same data range. This is the bit, as you can probably tell, I'm a bit obsessed about, the comparison. How is one place doing against another? And how can we either improve ourselves or and I'm going to do that. And it always comes out with this. So I'm then going to pick this and sorry, that's me because I'm presenting. Yes, so that's there. Now this is where I did this earlier. So here we've got the same thing, but what I've brought in for this now is a third metric. So what I've got here is footfall totals for place B, and I've got footfall totals for place A, and here I've got my sales totals So I can start to see whether things, there are patterns to things or otherwise. So for instance here, something that we know that would be true is the plummet for Christmas, because we can see that the footfall totals have gone down to 135, and we can see as well that because the business is also closed on Boxing Day these days, that the sales totals have plummeted as well. So there's an example of comparing those three different data sets. Now the last bit, let me just minimize this. That's how I was comparing data, just simple data sets, which was how many people in total, or how the different dwell times that we've got. The problem is, as you can see from, as we showed you from this, there's a lot of rows and there's a lot of columns. And as people add things like other sensor data, there'll be more. And if I go back to this, that's why I wanted to touch upon the worst thing. If you want to do something interesting with the data that you can download, we would recommend that you use something called a pivot table. A pivot table is one of the most useful tools you'll find in a spreadsheet. It's unfortunately one of the most difficult to get your head around to start off with. So apologies for anybody who has to deal with that. But it basically allows you to group things. It's clever. It says well, we'll see. The definition is there. That's the best way I could put together of how to use a pivot table. Excel, Google Sheets, they all have them. So a pivot table is what we'd recommend. Now, I've created some pivot tables already. And what the pivot tables do are this. They have basically summarized every day of the week, and they've totaled them. So across that period of time, from the 1st of October to the end of the year, it's basically looked at those and it's said, okay, well, the total for Wednesdays is 2,561. And as you can see, it's gone through and it's basically given us what are the busiest days of the week for that place. And the busiest days of the week for that place are quite clearly Saturday. And we know that's going to be the case in so many places, but it's amazing how the second most busy and the third most busy, and how businesses could then staff up to exploit that or do other things to make their other days busier. So that was my challenge for this, was using the data that I extracted from Patrum to tell me what the busiest day of the week in the last quarter of 2022 was. Unsurprisingly, it was Saturday, and I'm sure most of us can infer that the fact that Sunday was the second busiest day, that it was a town that would typically have visitors, tourists, etc. But it's definitely not Beth, I promise. So yeah, that's that. Just quickly, just so you're aware of where we are going, so we can take some questions then, is if I go back to slideshow, is where we are going. Sorry, what the other element this I think is not this point of this exercise, but is where a lot of the effort from Kiki and Ellen and Nia in Mentorron is the fact that it's not just the data from the footfall. Remember, each community has access, if they're registered with the Information Commissioner, to be able to use those email addresses that were collected in their community to use part of POD, which is an email list manager. It means you are able to select a segment. So if you were in Beth and you wanted to make your March busier, you could say, select to me everyone who's between the ages of 45 plus, who came to Beth for a holiday and who consented to email marketing, and the system will grab all of those email addresses and allow you to create a bilingual marketing campaign. And it will track who's opened it, etc. It will manage the permissions. So if somebody says, well, I don't want to receive this, it will manage all of those things for you. So it will keep a consistent track of who's logged into the Wi-Fi and who's said yes in terms of the email. The response rates have been formidable. I'll leave that bit there. And where are we going? Where most of our efforts are at the moment? is our stealth project with the Eisteddfod Genedlaethol in Bodidan. So we're using something called a Raspberry Shake, which is a seismometer, which we discovered on one of our installations in Porthamloch. And we're using it to take something that's called seismic noise, and it will then be able to, we hope, we're working with Manchester University on this, to be able to inform us in all of our network locations, but many of which surround the site, on traffic volumes before, during, and after the event. Yeah, so that's it. I think it's questions, really, is it? Just how
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Paul. I wasn't sure if we were going to have time then to fit them all in, so that's perfect. Has anyone got any questions or comments? You can raise your hand or you can pop them in the chat, whatever you feel more comfortable with. I think no one wants to be the first to go first. Okay, so I'll ask a question then, because I know there are some people here, not necessarily from Gwynedd and Anglesey or even, Northwest Wales. So is Patram available to other people from different counties or from different towns?
yes, it is. Yeah, we need to know what the hardware is that they're using, but if it was Cisco Meraki as part of the Welsh Government site, it's pretty straightforward to bring that data in.
Brilliant, thank you. Any questions at all? I don't know if you've just terrified people, or if you did a really good job of explaining it. So it's one or the other.
Migrate, that's the
Well, of course, you're welcome to follow up after the session. If you've got any questions that pop up, so you can message me or message Paul. Oh, here we go. So we've got a question from Clifford. Can you share how we can register and share our Meraki data?
okay. Clifford, are you able to what's the place that you're interested in bringing into Patram?
I can unmute if you'd prefer to speak. I'm not sure if people are able to unmute themselves, but I can ask. Doesn't seem to want to unmute.
So to answer it in another way,
figured it out. Sorry,
here we go.
Couldn't unmute. We've got 3 smart towns currently. Ddiddordeb being the biggest, with 3 more coming online soon using Meraki data as the controller. So we've got smart Wi-Fi towns, basically.
And that's Cyngor Powys, yeah, Powys County Council.
Powys, sorry, yes. Tell you where we are. Yeah, Powys County Council. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll share. Or Kiki can share my email address. It's just a matter of getting in touch with us. Us understanding the number of access points you've got in each location, and then we can pass it over. We are already a Powys supplier. I don't know if you had the joy of the first slide, but yeah, we already
yes,
do.
I did. I watched the whole way through. Thank you very much.
God,
it's very interesting. It'll be I can see this being very useful for us, because at the moment we export everything into Excel and try our best with it. So
exactly, the whole point of this is to expose this data, because then one of the reasons is because, as Kiki can, I think, emphasize as well, is by making all this data open, all the non-personal data, it's increased trust, because everybody seems to think that everybody's selling everything, and we understand why. But by making all of this data open, then it makes the idea of selling it a little bit daft, because it's there. Yeah, it's available. So yeah, that's our principal objective with this, and also trying to bring context to the data either via other locations. So, for instance, we do have a stealth network in Powys already in Llanidloes, but I'm probably not supposed to tell you that. So in Llanny we've got one already, but the other side of it is that because Cisco is just Wi-Fi, this allows you to bring, in essence, other sensors into the mix to be able to help describe or make a place smarter. Yeah, but yeah, please. I'm sure I can work out your email address. I can just email you after this.
I'll put you in touch.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Kiki. It's better you doing it, much better.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Clifford. I'll just check the chat quickly. So Jamie says, very insightful, Paul. Thank you. Any other questions? If this is all new to people, we also have a How to Become a Smart Town workshop on Monday at 10 AM, I think. And we also have an online lunch networking session as Smart Town. So for people to come and just have a really informal chat about where they're at, what the kind of barriers might be, and just share some experiences really. So yeah, that's open to anyone if anyone wants to join that. But otherwise, I guess we will say thank you and finish right on time. Remember, you can always follow up with any questions anytime, basically. You have my email address. So yeah, diolch yn fawr I chi gyd. Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Diolch.